The Washington Post reports this morning that President Trump is causing historic turmoil in his administration by refusing to agree that Russia interfered in the last election. The Post says it has created a, quote, situation in which the personal insecurities of the president and his refusal to accept what even many in his administration regard as objective reality have impaired the government's response to a national security threat. The paper says the report is based on interviews with more than 50 current and former U.S. officials. Washington Post national security correspondent Greg Miller is one of its authors, and he joins us from Washington. Greg, good morning. So how exactly is the president's insecurities affecting our national security?
Well, it's in two ways, right? One way is that there isn't discussion of this issue isn't allowed at the presidential level. He's never convened an NSC meeting on what happened in the election last year. Officials are scared or worried about bringing up information, new intelligence about Russia that might upset him. So in that way, it happens in that. And then there are more sort of active things that the administration has done. It has opposed additional sanctions against Russia. It has tried to roll back the few penalties that President Obama imposed before he left office. If you recall, one of the measures that the Obama administration took was to seize 2 Russian compounds in the United States in punishment for the election interference. The Trump administration spent months this year exploring ways to return those before it was sort of forced to abandon that plan.
Yeah, the U.S. intelligence on this is clear, that Russia tried to interfere in our elections and a pillar of our American democracy. And yet, as you detailed, there does not appear to be any administration effort to try and roll back those efforts in the future, correct?
That's right. I mean, you know, as we've reported, this administration has created a special commission to investigate widely discredited claims of voter fraud in the last election, but there is no such panel to look at election interference from abroad, including by Russia. I mean, you just can cite example after example after example of ways in which the administration has tried to deny this reality.
Greg, why do you think that it's so hard for the President of the United States to accept the findings of the U.S. Intelligence Committee?
You know, one of the really surprising things for me was in interviews with White House officials for this story. You'll see the quotes in the story. They will tell you face to face that it is personal. He views this as an affront, as delegitimization of his huge election win, what he sees as an historic win. So it's very personal, and that's why we write about how this is what makes this so strange, is that a president's personal insecurities are affecting how the government responds to a threat.
You said, you wrote at one point that the president wants to think that his charisma had a lot to do with his win. You also detailed that the presidential daily briefing is allegedly structured to avoid upsetting him. So how does that work?
Well, a lot of the material on Russia that has to do with the election will end up just being in the written portion of the briefing, which many people we've talked to say he doesn't pay very close attention to. They'll avoid raising it orally with him or talk around it or put it at the end of the briefing after they get through other subjects. I mean, it's just one of many examples of ways they try to work around this super sensitive issue with the president.
All right, Greg Miller, thanks so much. Extraordinary reporting.